Good evening, everyone. This is a online public discussion in regard with women leaders in politics. I believe it is a very important topic to discuss because in many countries the situation in this regard is not so well as it could be, for example, in Western countries and democratic communities. But of course, even in democratic communities in European Union, people, young ladies, face different kind of problems and maybe misunderstanding or stereotypes and etc. So today our distinguished speakers are Ms. Marketa Gregorova from European Parliament and President of the Free Russia Foundation in Washington, D.C., Ms. Natalia Arno. Thank you a lot for taking part. And my first question will be to Marketa Gregorova. I would like during this first part to introduce you this wonderful person, this very authoritative member of the European Parliament, former chair of the European Pirate Party, and talk a bit about her experience in this regard, which challenges she faces or dealt with before, and how did she go from activism to politics. Marketa, please, I would like to ask, what was your motivation in the very young age to become an activist and then move to such a well-known authoritative platform as European Parliament? Please.
Hi Igor, hi everyone. Thank you for coming today and thank you for the introduction. Well, that's a very broad question because it comes, oh, by the way, I have a cat and she will occasionally walk behind me or on me. So sorry for the intrusions. It's a very broad question. I think it's connected to my characteristics and how I perceive the world because, I'm an idealist. Of course, I know that it's, let's say, a more long-term approach because in politics you have to also be very rational and looking for the short-term solution too. Otherwise, you won't progress with anything. But in general, I'm an idealistic person. So I actually followed politics since I was really, really young. Like I remember watching each Sunday with my grandparents, TV where they discuss politics since I was like 10 years old. And then I always looked into newspapers. And later on, when I was deciding what to study at a university, I honestly didn't really know. But then I found out that I was from quite a small city, so I didn't know about a lot of opportunities. And then I found out you can study politics and politology, international relations, this kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, you can actually study my hobby. So that's when I decided to push it more forward and went to study European studies and international relations because I thought this field is very cool. So I still didn't really know what I will do in future. Politics was never my career choice. It was always more of escalation of what I was already doing. And I still don't think that will be like my last point in life, that I will be a politician for the rest of my life. I really don't want that. I just want to help somehow, to make some good in the world. Now I feel like I have the energy and opportunity to do some good from this position, but later on I can see myself in various other fields, in NGOs, in other organizations, and doing some good there. We'll see.
Did you have anyone, any person or some authoritative person in Czech Republic or maybe in your city or country who helped you, supported you in the beginning of your way, pushed you, motivated you?
Interesting question. Well, as I said, I watched it with my grandparents, especially my grandfather was a huge inspiration to me because, in Czech Republic, there, as in many other post-Soviet countries, there is this, let's say, there is this line where older people tend to vote more for Communist Party and, let's say, these kind of solutions based on the historic development. However, my granddad actually voted for more progressive, even new parties that emerged. Like in 2009, there were new parties, and he decided to vote for it. He was very progressive. Like these days, I wouldn't really comply with his points of view, but he showed me, the interest that there are other ways that you can think about politics and you can get included and get involved. So yeah, he was great inspiration. Otherwise, as I said, I was from very small cities, so I didn't really have any, pushes towards politics, because apart from the bigger cities, in smaller cities, no one really gets you more included or actually tells you what is happening. Even on the municipal level, it's like, oh, just don't care about it. The politicians somewhere high up there will solve it themselves. So it was more like my decision. And of course that I met some really cool people along the way in the Pirate Party that I'm actually from, because Pirate Party is actually very activist based itself. We were in like marginal for like 8 years, and nobody really believed that we will make it or whatever, but we worked really hard for the 8 years, and then we got into parliament and showed everyone that even if you don't have oligarchs behind you on huge money or someone important behind you, if you're just people that believe in something, that you can make it. Like, of course, not all the time, but at some point.
Thank you. And could you please tell me whether you faced any kind of problems in regard with misunderstanding or wrong attitude exactly because of your young age and because that you were a young lady? I mean, in the beginning of your career, when you were starting your political way.
Oh, it's not just at the beginning. I'm reliving it each day practically. I wonder when it will change. When you are old enough to not be considered too young. Is it around 40? Is it around 60?
78, I believe.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm encountering.
How do you deal with this issue?
Well, I'm trying to counter it with being the most informed person in the room at all the time. Of course, it is demanding, and it might be sometimes even like harmful for me, because sometimes I'm afraid I'm not informed enough, even though the others are sometimes less informed, just because they didn't care as much as I do. But it really helps, because when you're discussing a topic and everybody looks down at you because, you're a girl, you're young, you have colorful hair, whatever. When you say something that makes sense and they actually didn't know it, or it just fits in there, they suddenly start to listen to what you're saying, not how you look or what you represent in their mind. So that's helpful. It's even though not always entirely possible.
Could you please tell me, for our audiences, maybe in Georgia, Armenia, or other countries where young activists, ladies, women, not only women by the way, are willing to start their career and maybe someday get to European Parliament as well, what are the way and instructions to do it when you're an activist in some maybe small country and you want to develop your career? What was your strategy in this regard? How many young people are now in the European Parliament? And could you please provide our audiences with concrete, specific details of how to do that? It's very cool.
Well, it always depends whether you want to be the politician with the responsibility and being the face of it, or whether you want to be kind of behind everything that is happening and really create the politics. Because honestly, not every role suits every person. I see great minds and I have wonderful assistants, and some of them I'm sure would never want to be like in the spotlight, and it's really great because I don't mind being in the spotlight, and they're creating great stuff for me. So of course, if you want to just be in the work and in the EU, or work in even your parliaments, wherever you are, the assistant positions, or being expert or something, are a great way to get into that. As for politicians themselves, well, it's about elections, so there is not really one good advice how to do it, because each country is different, voters are different, and they have different like moods even, you know, deciding whom they will vote for. And it's not about whether you are the best option, it's sometimes who sells it the best, you know. It's really about the press, not prestige, as one famous
So you
man
should
said.
be representative of some European country, like parliament of some European country, to be elected to this organization. Do I understand right?
Well, I'm not sure.
You were chair of the Pirate Party before, and from this position you were like elected to European Parliament. Is it right?
Oh, no. It's normal elections.
That's what is the structure?
Yeah. No. My position as the chair of European Pirates really didn't help in anything. It's not so relevant, you know, for our internal pirate party politics and for the voters. Like the voters didn't even know. It was a lot of work for not really a lot of recognition. And sometimes it looks good on my CV, but that's not really the point, is it? Well, first things is of course that I chose like a really great party because I chose it by heart. I didn't choose it like, well, where will I make the best career, you know? And so I was member of the Pirate Party since I was 19. So now it's already like 8 years that I'm a member of the party. And during the years that we were marginal, I did a lot of voluntary work. It didn't require any money. I just invest a lot of energy and my personal time in it. And people like recognize that. People acknowledge that, and also they get to know me. They know my values. They know what I represent. And apparently they believe in that too. So within the party, they voted me on the candidate list on the second place. And then, well, the pirate politics in general are starting to, you know, get more recognition within Czech Republic. So we then got 3 seats. So I got in. That's the story in short. Of course, I don't know if you want to go more into campaigning details.
But would you say that there are lots of young people, and for example, in European Parliament, because for example, in Georgia, where we see lots of freedom and lots of opportunities for young people to develop their career or maybe become an activist for good or for bad reasons, we see that lots of young people, students, are becoming activists and trying to do some politics. And even in Russia, where freedom is something unknown, lots of young people are trying to take active part in political life and to demand for defending their rights and other freedoms. So would you say that activism and politics are becoming younger and younger?
Yes, I think it's part of how our democracies are evolving, because people are starting to realize that democracy is actually participation of people. And so more people are starting to get included and don't listen to those voices that are saying that someone is too young or too old or too female or too male or whatever, which is great, because the more people that are like inclusive like that will get there, they can show the others that yes, it's possible. For example, today I've heard that that Norway minister will be newly a 27 years old woman, which is like great, like minister. Wow, I don't think there've ever been, especially in Norway, but somewhere else, such a young minister. And I'm also 27, by the way, so I was like, yay, it's happening, you know, and it's empowering others too, to know that even people of such a young age, I sometimes feel old, but of such a young age, are getting there and are there, which of course doesn't mean that there shouldn't be older people. I just think that there should be more balance, both in gender, both in age, because we need all those inclusive points of view on what is going on in our world, right?
From this position, when you already represent some views in European Parliament and you have some lots of connections, network of friends and colleagues, do you have an option to help young activists, young leaders, young women leaders to become activists or politicians? Do you believe it's worthy, or they should go through this path as you did themselves, maybe to become stronger, for example? What is your position in this regard?
No, of course, there are plenty of ways to help. One of them is, of course, employing them on traineeships, for example, which is constantly happening. Well, now during the Corona times, it kind of stopped, but otherwise, there are still open traineeship positions, I think in plenty of offices, including mine, so they can get included like that. Also, well, it's not just within the pirates, there are Young Pirates of Europe, but also other organizations. For example, in Europe, there is one pan-European movement, Volt, and they actually got together in the European Parliament already and invited some young MEPs to talk to them, how to get included, how did we get this position, and what they can do to get more included. So I think it's happening, and there are plenty of ways. And I don't know how is it in respective countries where you are all from, but I guess that even in your parliaments, there are younger people, hopefully, and that you can ask them, for advices or what to do or how to get involved. At least you can go into the streets still. But yeah, I think that there are options, especially in the European Parliament.
Yeah, I'm asking because there are like two arguments, and one of them is that young generation, young people, young women who want to become, for example, activists or politicians, and actually any profession, they should go through all of these stages themselves to become like stronger, to become ready for all challenges they will face during their life. And there is another argument that this help or support that may be provided by some people who already became as you are like European Parliament member and who understand the whole way to reach this goal, this support may really help. Which argument you agree with?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that saying that someone should just go through it themselves is not really the best way, because there has been already people that went through the same path. Why shouldn't they help you to go through the path more easily? Because then they can maybe go further. If you exhausted yourself already on the path, if you help someone to go through the path without exhausting themselves, they can go further. So I'm very much for helping others to move even further and to help them, because it helps to progress even our societies.
Would you say that when you face such a great amount of different stereotypes, it is important to develop your image? And for example, your very bright image is developed exactly for, I don't know, feeling more secure, more safe, or maybe for other people to remember your image better. Is it important to create some image and follow it during your career?
Well, my color of hair and general appearance is not something that I really thought through because of politics.
I don't think so.
I look like this for already like 12 years. I chose this color like 12 years ago and decided that it really fits me, so I stayed with it. But before that, I had, for example, even white short hair, short like this. So I always went kind of crazy with.
Is it important to develop some image and promote it, especially when you have such attitudes from other people that you're young and etc.? To have some ready image, promoting yourself?
Well, every marketing specialist would tell you that yes, branding is immensely important. On the other hand, I'm also trying to not to push too hard my appearance as my branding, but my opinions, which I kind of feel that actually, considering my age and my appearance, I can get away with more rebellious stance or more, pronounced. Because I understand that sometimes when you're doing it for already plenty years, you feel like, you have to have some attire, you have to like wear the suit and wear the correct opinions. I don't have to, and I'm enjoying it that I don't have to, and I'm trying to be as vocal and as strong about my opinions as I possibly can. And I hope that it will stick with me for as long as it can.
There is now a very popular, let's say, issue in the world, I mean harassment, and of course I support all of these campaigns in regard with harassment and to punish people who did really bad stuff using its status or other like opportunities. Did you ever face such an attitude, or did you ever face harassment during your career?
Well, there are always some cases of very inappropriate behavior from some people. I never encountered something, that would be a criminal offense. I'm capable of, stopping it quite soon because I'm quite loud, let's say, and vocal about my opinions. But yes, of course, and I've heard many other cases from my colleagues and friends, so I know that it is a problem. Luckily, I don't know about cases within my party, as we really grew up from those activists and not just power grabbing people. But I think that it's really a problem that needs to be countered.
But what will be your suggestion to any girl or young woman who face such problems, whether it is more effective, for example, to make public statements, to sue such a people, or to keep silence, as many of young women do in reality? What is the most effective way from your point of view to deal with this enormous and very bad situation?
Well, firstly, I would recommend to get someone you trust and to accompany you to a police station or wherever they can help you to put the offender wherever he or she belongs.
But if it is your boss, for example, or some high-ranking official, and you depend on this person if you, for example, want to go politics and etc., what will you do or what will you suggest in such kind of situation?
Of course, I personally trust more in greater good in this regard. If you can stop this offender from harming more people than just you, sorry, then I think it's worth it to do it, even if locally it can harm you. And I also believe that if you are capable and if you are so morally high that you will do this, then you will find a job or build a career even without this shitty person. Sorry for my friend.
So now in your 27, as I know, you're already a member of the European Parliament. And from this point of view, what will be your next step, where you want to develop your career? Because as I understand, like activism part of your life is over. So what next?
I don't think that my activism career is over. I honestly don't know what former members of the European Parliament are doing, but I'm meeting plenty of interesting people and plenty of interesting researchers. For example, Alex Stamos is former chief of security at Facebook, and now he's working at Stanford University, and they are working on countering disinformation, for example, which is a huge topic for me right now. And if I don't manage to push a legislation regarding disinformation, I can imagine working in some organizations or even universities like that too, to help push the topic, to help spread awareness, or just make people more, informed, to help better work with information and get the media literate. So that's one way I can see myself. Of course, maybe I will be so fed up with politics that I will just want to go back to private sector for a few years and then go back. But I don't think so. I'm quite motivated right now to push forward the topics. So now I'm kind of building the network. And if I don't manage, or I won't want to in the next 4 years to be re-elected, then I will just connect with my old network and see whether they want me somewhere.
What I mean is whether you believe that it's important to have some agenda or plan of how you are going to develop your career, to know already now from this situation which steps you are going to make in this or that situation. You, for example, said about developing some network of contacts, and of course it's very useful, but do you believe that agenda is needed?
Yes, well, I didn't even know that I will be elected, so I'm not really a future planner, you know. I'm kind of just going with the flow. But yeah, I'm for creating some network already, because yes, I'm realizing that I will have to plan to some extent. But also for me till now in my life, it worked just fine to somehow just follow my heart and do whatever I feel is at the moment the best I can do. And it always somehow ends up. So maybe it sounds too idealistic, but that's just my character, you know.
Could you please tell me, when you were an activist, of course you had some goals to achieve, you had some things you were ready to fight for, and now from the perspective of European Parliament member, do you work on these issues? Do you see the opportunity, do you use the opportunity to change the situation in regard with those activities you were protesting against when you were an activist? Do you see concrete results?
Well, of course, as a pirate, we focused a lot on the freedom of internet and, of course, also copyright. So to some extent, even though I'm not really in the committees that are dealing directly with that, I can, of course, influence it. And especially with the disinformation part, there is a lot of topics regarding censorship and freedom of internet. So that's something that really connects with my past work. Also, I used to work actually as an e-commerce specialist, and now I'm shadow rapporteuring e-commerce directive. So that's also like nice connection of what I used to do and what I do now. And when I was in one NGO, I participated in their activities regarding monitoring of export of arms into countries, like illegal arms export. So I'm not rapporteuring. I'm not a rapporteur of that actually right now, because my colleague from Germany took it, as she was more experienced, and also in Germany it is a huge problem and a huge topic. But I'm trying to help her with that, and I think we are doing a really good job in that because even though I'm focusing now more on the future of warfare, even the export of conventional weapons and arms is a really important one because, of course, it helps to destroy other countries and regimes with our weapons that we are exporting there. And that needs to be stopped.
To finalize this introduction part, would you recommend some specific steps for those activists, young women, who are now, for example, protesting near some parliament building in any country, and they want to move their career forward? So, like some specific steps. Today you're protesting, what should you do tomorrow?
Well, there are several options. I personally, in those countries, I met a lot of young women and wonderful young people in the positions of experts, either in organizations or even in the parliament, assistants of the politicians. So I would even advise start like that. Choose, for example, a politician or a party that you trust or you believe in. I hope that there are some like that. And if not, then I will have another point. But choose someone you really believe in and tell them you want to work for them voluntarily, just, to see how it looks like, how it works, and to learn from them. And then grow your own network and then start to participate more and maybe participate in the next elections. That's also possible. A lot of people are kind of scared to go into politics, but trust me, nobody knows what they are doing there. Really, no one. They are doing it for the first time, life. We are all doing it. So don't be scared of that just because they told you are too young or too inexperienced or whatnot. They didn't know what they are doing either. Everybody has to start somewhere. So I would advise that. If you are not really looking into going straight into politics, then I've seen in those countries many wonderful NGOs, not just the famous ones like Amnesty International or People in Need, but even smaller ones focusing on specific groups. So choose one that you really like okay, they are helping people in social need, or they are helping LGBTQI people, and whatever you feel like is your heart's desire, and join them. Again, offer your services voluntarily, offer your time. time is the most valuable commodity that you can offer to them, and see where it gets you. I think it can get you to really great places. It did it for me.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this introduction part. I thought that it's very important to show your example because from my point of view, and actually from perspective of big communities, young activists, being a politician or especially joining some international organizations such as European Parliament is something very far. It's impossible, it's very difficult, and no one believes that they can do it, and etc. Or maybe some great support is needed. And your example shows very well that you can do it yourself, and you did it yourself. And even from like being an activist from a small city, you could reach this goal if you want to. Thanks a lot, and we will get back to our discussion in the third part together with Ms. Natalia Arno, the president of the Russia Foundation, and our participants. And now I would like to introduce Natalia Arno, founder of the Russia Foundation in Washington, D.C. Natalia, hello.
Hello and hi Igor. Hello everybody, and it was really great to listen to Marketa and very, very inspirational. We were discussing before the event started that last time we saw each other, like when we met, it was at our event in Strasbourg in October. And I was thinking right now that, again, we can invite you not only as an expert or European Parliament deputy, but even more as this inspirational trainer, coach for our young women leaders. So it's great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. So, Ms. Natalia Arno, the president and the founder of the Russia Foundation in United States. So it's another, like, slightly another sphere, but very close. It's about NGO, do tanks, think tanks. So Natalia, my first question to you will be also a bit general. How did you find the strength and why did you do it to leave your homeland country, I mean Russian Federation, and move to United States, totally new country for you, and fight with the regime you not agree with from Washington, D.C.? How did you find motivation to go through it, to start everything from the very beginning in America?
Thank you, Igor. Well, first of all, I'm from Siberia, and we have like a nomadic nation. So to move, to travel is in our blood and on our genetic level. I moved in '99 from Siberia to Moscow to have my PhD degree. But while working on it, I started to work for an American democracy promotion organization. So it was in 2004. And I was working for this organization for 10 years. In 2008, I was appointed as an acting country director for the International Republican Institute, which I know is very, very active in Georgia as well. Your question was, how did I decide to leave? But I actually didn't decide to leave. Russia is my country. I want my country back. But in 2012, I was forced to leave Russia. I was given basically 48 hours to time to pack and leave. Otherwise, I would be in jail for 20 years for working for that democracy promotion organization, because in 2012, the situation completely changed in Russia. We had lots of new repressive legislation, including this state treason law. And so I had to very fast decide what to do. So one of my good and very practical skills that I have now is to pack fast, which is not being used this year because usually I would travel a lot conducting our events, but this year again it's a very weird year. So since 2012 I cannot go back to my home country, to Russia. I was in Europe for a year and a half. We were in Lithuania first and then in Poland. And then I resigned from IRI, working for 10 years for this organization, and moved to the US. Where I started Free Russia Foundation. So we are 5.5 years old now. Yes, as you said, working from Washington, D.C., we have a headquarters here, but we also have a lot of regional offices now. For 3 years in Kiev, Ukraine. Igor opened our regional branch in Tbilisi in Georgia a year and a half ago now. And so we have some new chapters in Prague as well.
Yeah, you are now describing this international project with offices in different countries. as something easy. But of course, it was very hard, I believe, to start this initiative in the very beginning. So where did you find support? I don't mean financial support, but maybe some people, some authoritative people who supported you to start this project from the very beginning. And now this project is like represented in many countries, and it is working very effectively from my perspective in regard with Kremlin's aggression in many countries such as Georgia and Ukraine. So how did you find motivation and support? What is the strategy to launch a new project when you first come to United States?
Well, I guess the most important thing is again the mission and the goal and the vision and like everything about what we are doing is in our name, Free Russia. We want basically Russia to be free, and this is a very mission-driven, very value-based organization. And I guess when we do it sincerely. We really care about Russia and Russian people. We really want the situation to be different there. We really believe that if Russia is a normal country for its own citizens, but also if Russia behaves as a global citizen on the international arena, it's better for everybody. And so this is, I think, a very noble cause, and we have a lot of supporters from the very beginning. It wasn't easy. It's still like a startup mode. It's still, I have to think about so many things. But again, we have so many supporters. First of all, we have a great team because really it's a team of like-minded people. This is very important for us. It's something new actually, because myself, when I had to flee from Russia, at first it was like the first several days, it was completely disaster. Like, what are we going to do here? Like, we always worked inside Russia. We always were inside all these networks, working together with activists, with journalists, with politicians, and so on. How are we going to, like, even what are we going to do? But then we understood that actually activism doesn't end with borders. It doesn't matter where we are, but we can do so much even from any location, like Europe or the US, anywhere, but just be together. So this was probably, again, another thing that we were able to do, and still are building this global network of pro-democracy Russians. And actually this pandemic also made us even closer to those who are inside Russia, because again, now we are doing so many things like together online. Everybody has to. So all these borders are not that important any longer.
Would you say that you need some specific goal, specific mission to attract so many supporters and such kind of support to launch some new initiative in the United States, for example?
Well, again, as I said, our goal is Free Russia, and actually the best result would be if there is no need for Free Russia Foundation, that we can go back to Free Russia, and we can build some normal country, do some positive reforms in our country, and again, it will be absolutely different game, absolutely different reality. So this is like probably the most important for us.
So when you first came to Washington, D.C., was it about like, I don't know, 25 receptions a day or 25,000 meetings a day to find help, support, to find supporters? What is it about, the first like strategy to follow?
Well, it was again, as I said, never easy, never ending. Actually started it from my kitchen table when I just moved to the US. I was living in California back then. I had to fly to DC to meet with people, to attend some events, to describe our idea. And at first, again, with zero funding, but it is a very grand ideas. Had to meet a lot of people, to include a lot of people, a lot of partnerships. And also it was a year, as you remember, 2014 as a very important year when again a lot of Western countries woke up about Russia. I don't know why 2008 didn't wake them up, but 2014 yes did, and they understood that it's very important to discuss Russia, to analyze it, to change something, to do things. And so I would come to big organizations. I would say, this is what we need to do. Let's do it. And I don't have resources, but I think you should invite this person or that person. So this is how it started. Also, very first activities that Free Russia Foundation did back then, it was work with the US Congress. And the first campaign, which is continuing until now, is a campaign to release Kremlin's political prisoners. And as you all know, the number of political prisoners is increasing. But back then, and still until now, we have a lot of also Ukrainian hostages of the Kremlin. So what we did was to bring Russian lawyers to describe the cases of Ukrainian political prisoners to US senators and congressmen. And at first, what we realized that, again, there is not enough information and also not enough maybe trust to all of us. So we had to include international lawyers who could, again, write some opinions about these cases. But again, with no resources, how could we do it? And for any international lawyer to analyze, to write legal opinions, they needed to, again, to know this case, not only from open sources, but from all these materials, legal materials. And it's like, for example, if you remember, there was this Nadia Savchenko, a Ukrainian deputy of Rada, and she was in prison in Russia. And it was like 80 volumes, 200 pages each of her cases, how to even to translate it. So we had to ask volunteers to say, like, help us, we need this. And so many, and it was also such a collaborative action that Russians, Ukrainians, everybody else who knew and who could translate from Russian into English helped us. And within 2 weeks, we were able to translate all these like huge materials and do it. So we understood that it's actually not only about money and not only about this, but again, all this like doing something together can be even without resources. But again, slowly and slowly we started to work. The first thing was to help and produce, translate into English the report Putin War, about the direct engagement, military engagement of Putin's Russia in eastern Ukraine. This work was started by famous Russian opposition leader Boris Nemtsov, who was assassinated 5 years ago, and but his team decided to finish his last project. So it was very important for us to translate it in English, to present it here in Washington, D.C., in Brussels as well, everywhere else. But we were very proud about presenting it in 12 Russian cities, which was like, again, very, very, very important.
We discussed this point with Marketa, and in your case, when you first came to Washington, did you face any kind of like bad attitude in regard with lots of stereotypes, like women came to America trying to fight for some place in this do tank, think tank, NGO sphere? Did you face any kind of issues, problems in this regard in America with, I don't know, experts communities or general communities? The problem of stereotypes.
I was told at the very beginning that in Washington you have to pay your dues, you have to be here, and there were some who were commenting that we are here in this sphere for 30 years, you don't know how things are be done there. But I didn't care about that like ever. In Russia, I was also told the same. I was actually the first Russian and the first female who became country director for such a big organization. And also back then I heard this, like, it won't work, it won't, like, it never worked before. Why even try?
Sorry, it was American organization. Why was it an issue?
It was an American organization, but heads of this organization would be always Americans with a very big experience of political campaigns. And again, it wasn't even a practice to have a local citizen as a country director, especially, again, a Russian and a woman. So again, I heard a lot of these such things that, like, it won't work. You won't be, it's a macho society. Politics is very masculine in Russia, like probably everywhere, but in Russia it's very much masculine, and so it won't work there. But yes, it did.
That's very important. How did it work? How did you prove, or you didn't have to prove, that this is a successful case?
Well, leadership is about not giving up, and you try and if you have the vision, you just do it. For example, as a Free Russia Foundation now, like, I could apply for different grants, and for example, there is an organization and I am applying and they denying our grants. I wouldn't just stop doing that. I would be continuing, I would be changing, I would be trying to improve, I would be asking, what did I do wrong? Same like everywhere, all the time, like, how can I improve? How can I do better? Also, I think leaders are very competitive. So again, we want to show, yes, we are the best. Like anything like we are doing, we should be the best in this. We should know more, we should do better, we should be more effective, we should include more people. So I think this is also very, very important. Also, I think maybe to women, it's like there are higher standards. and you have to like do more because of those high standards. You had to be more hardworking, you have to be more persistent, more determined all the time. It was like, again, it wasn't easy for me from the very beginning. Again, being in Moscow from Siberia, for example, it wasn't easy at all. And in my childhood, moving from a village to a city, to a capital, again, I have to prove everybody, like, again, I can do it. I can do better than anybody. So
Did you have any people in this very beginning when you moved from Siberia to Moscow, the people who supported you, who motivated you, or helped you in some other way? Who was these people and how did they help you?
I'd say I'm very much impacted by my grandmother, who was like really leader, very strong woman. And during Soviet times, she didn't care about communist bosses. If she saw some injustice, if she saw something should be done, she could like even use all the possible like very huge Russian curse words against them for this, cases of injustice or something. So again, I was very, very inspired by my grandmother, who was really a hero for me, like, and a role model. And I think like she always like said, like, if you want it, if you cannot do it, it means you don't want it enough.
But when you come to such a city as Moscow, it's a very difficult city. Of course, you need some help, some friends, some people to support you, to maybe direct you. Did you have such a people when you came to a big city from Siberia? And maybe, or like it was some kind of motivation from your grandma, as you said, and some willing to prove that I can do it, and it was enough.
I guess some motivation when again you have some leadership inside you. You want to be able to show that yes, you can do that. I remember when I just moved to Moscow. It was 99. It was a terrible times, all these apartment bombings and just a lot of fear everywhere. And I was met by my mother's friend who lived in Moscow all his life. And he was meeting me at the train station, and he said, yeah, Moscow is a very tough city. Like mostly it breaks people, and just be prepared to go back to Siberia, to your home, like native land, and just don't be. It's not about you. It's just this very, very cruel city. And I was like, really back then, no, I'm going to, I don't know, I'm going to show that I can live in Moscow or anywhere else if I want. So it's important.
Yeah, I believe that many people, and maybe Marketa also, hear such a word that you will not do it, you will fail, you'll go back to your city. So it is just a courage that should motivate and push you forward.
Courage, motivation, belief in your cause, good team of like-minded people around, because again, you can be a hero by yourself, but again, it's very, very nicer and bigger and stronger and more sustainable when you have a good team around you. In Moscow, I could do my scientific career because my mother is a scientist, and I could stay there in this like Academy of Science, and it would be easier probably because again everybody knew her, and I had to when I started working for IRA, it was an absolutely new career for me. I didn't know anybody there, and when I moved to the US, also again it was from the scratch. It's interesting actually.
Challenges from challenge to challenge.
Yes.
Do you think that leadership is something you're like born with, or you have to develop it through your life?
I probably, the first, as I said, I was very, not upset, but I was like very motivated by the word of this, my mother's friend who met me in Moscow. But I also, like maybe through all my life, I was very well motivated when I opened the box with the letters from my mother's students. She was working as a teacher at a school back then when she gave birth to me. And I was born on a Men's Day in Russia, then a day of a Soviet army, February 23rd. And I remember that later I found the box when her students were congratulating my mother with my birth, and girls were very happy, like, oh, the girl was born, great, like let her be happy, successful, and all this. And all the boys wrote, it's such a pity that she's not a boy being born on a Men's Day. So again, I probably through all my life, I was showing that, come on, I can do a lot of things maybe better than you.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe motivation is a major thing that you need to go forward and don't stop. I'd also like to ask, as I did with Marketa, did you have any cases or did you face during your career path the harassment, maybe in Washington, D.C., or before that in Russia? Did you have such cases, and what will be your suggestion to people who face it?
Definitely not in Washington, and also I think this is times when, like again, it's harassment is a big issue. It's a lot of lights on this problem, and I think like again changing times. But of course, back in Moscow, when I was just starting my career there as an NGO, it was like again a lot of cases. I was traveling all over Russia from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok, and many things were happening in regions as well. Or when Russian Parliament, Russian State Duma wasn't that pro-Kremlin completely, there were some pro-democracy deputies back then in the beginning of 2000s, for example, and I would visit it. It was like a place, not only as our former speaker was saying, not a place for discussions, but also a very huge place for harassment. So a lot of cases like that, but again, as Market said, nothing like that would be like very like legally offensive, but just enough for me to push back, to say something. Like you have to be tough, you have to be Iron Lady all the time, and you have like again use a lot of things, including humor. It helps a lot.
Yeah, but the issue is very like widespread because maybe, of course, in Washington D.C. it's already easier because it's like on the surface, but in Russia and other countries, the problem is really huge. Maybe you remember the situation with Russian State Duma representative Leonid Slutsky, who was blamed for several types of harassments from different people and no results. I mean, in regard with some I don't know, punishment after all. And would you suggest that it's more important if such a situation happens to go to police to make some public statements, even maybe with the risk of being fired or punished for this, or to just keep silence and do nothing?
Yes, of course, definitely. But again, it's easy to go to the police, for example, in the United States or in the Czech Republic, because there is the rule of law, there are independent courts. The situation is very different in Russia, for example, and if somebody goes to the police, doesn't matter that the deputy or the person who is in power would be punished. But of course, every time it's important to document all this. It's important even if there is no justice internally, like even for like huge high profile murders like Boris Nemtsov, it still there is no justice inside Russia. So we have to include some international mechanism for that. The same with such cases as well. Again, just include European Court of Human Rights or any other, but also be public. Yes, find people who support you. The most important thing is to think that you are alone, that like nobody cares about you. And if you have this, again, you like togetherness, that like again, so many people had the same and can advise you, can help you through all this emotionally and legally and through different means, then it's much bigger. So one of the things that we are doing all the time is again to show that this is like you're not alone, we are together. It's like a big movement, and there are so many links, there are so many again people who can help you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Today we have some ladies, participants, and young women. Maybe they would like to ask something. Tatia?
Hello. So it was really interesting to listen to you, and thank you for sharing your experience and ideas and things. So I work for the Civic Activism Project, and I have much communication with the young people, the students, the activists. And what I see here in Georgia, the thing is that one and the same people are active in many different social issues and things. One and the same people protest the things. For example, if the worker dies, or if something disaster happens in the country, or if not disaster, but some rights are ruined or something. So one and the same group of people protest this. And what I feel is that it becomes more difficult to engage new people and young people in the activism. or to get these young people interested into with the politics, and to make young people interested in voting. For example, in Georgia, we are having the parliamentary election in October, and I have the feeling that the same will happen, that young people will stay at home and older people will come and vote and will decide the fate of the country for the next 4 years. And how can, I don't know, my question is, how can we make these young people get more interested or more involved, or is this experience common in your countries or in the States or in Czech Republic, that these young people are not very much involved, even in going and voting for them is some kind of problem or problematic here in Georgia. This is my observation. Maybe it's not very accurate, but I was involved. I was involved so I volunteered for the independent candidate. We had the by-election last year, and I volunteered and I observed the whole election day on one polling station. And what I saw, so most of the people who voted were really at the age of my parents and grandparents, and young people are really inactive. And even if we have discussions about the politics, of course, my organization and my team try to attract the students and youth, but still we need to contact so many people to get some of them on the discussion day or event. So we are happy we have really many people who are interested in this, but of course we need more people to get interested into politics. And what are your thoughts? What are these major concerns and things that they always want to stay at home? I don't know.
Thanks a lot for your question. Maybe Marketa, please, could you please suggest something in regard with how to attract younger generation to active political process?
Of course. Hi, Tatia. Thank you for the question and for your involvement. It's part of the solution, by the way, so it's really important. Well, you have actually good evaluation of the fact that this is happening everywhere. Attracting younger people to get involved and younger voters is really difficult, and everywhere. I think that I'm speaking also for the United States, it's highly problematic. I've been to several, let's say, panels or even discussions with students who are more involved, how to get involved their generation or the younger people. And maybe my answer will be surprising or will sound simplified, but it's actually very effective, which is humor. And I mean not boomer humor, as some would say, but really humor of the generation, the memes. Make politics into memes. What used to be a satire, I don't know, on TV shows or standard satire for our parents and grandparents, we now need to transfer through our channels of communication. Put it on Reddit, put it on YouTube or 9gag, wherever. Of course, Twitter, whatever is generation in your country using at the moment. I know that in US it's a lot of TikTok, unfortunately, because it's Chinese company, but use whatever.
That's the one we use at the moment.
To get that message, yeah, I know. Secondly, I think that the use of influencers or whoever is speaking to the generation, their language is important, because we can try, or the older politicians or older people can try whatever they want, but the younger audiences won't listen to the so-called authorities. They will listen to those that they decided to have an authority, which are nowadays usually influencers. In Czech Republic, it's already happening. There are some very famous YouTubers, for example, that are starting to get involved in politics objectively, not like, hey, vote for that party, but more like, hey, there will be elections. It's about this. It's important. Go and vote. And it's actually increasing the amount of voters. Then they share it, on Instagram, like, hey, I was voting for the first time, it's cool, making it sexy, making it cool. That's what needs to be done, because so far the politics for older generations was something that was like necessary, kind of boring and obligatory, and they got used to it. But all the younger generations are not used to it, so we need to make it attractive for them. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, if I may, I would add that, for example, in Russia, where it's very dangerous for you to go out to protest because you could be detained, arrested, or even worse, what they did, some people, for example, when they protested, young opinion makers took part, YouTubers, bloggers, and even rap singers who took part in such protest activities. And even if younger generation didn't find the strength to go out, they listened to the voices from these protest activities. They listened to these opinion makers, to these popular music singers or rap singers, and they received much more information already. So maybe it is useful to start some public awareness campaigns using younger opinion makers, more modern, more popular among these kind of groups. And elections is a very difficult process, and of course it's much more difficult to attract people there than to the protest itself, for example. So maybe long-term public campaigns will work. And actually, in a few days, we're going to have a very interesting training in regard with building observers network around the country, not for some concrete specific country, but in general. And it also may help building an independent observing network consisted or including there lots of young activists to make them feel more important, needed, useful, etc. So I think this is the case that could be useful here as well. And please, Tatavik, would you like to ask something?
My internet connection is very bad. I'm very sorry. Thank you very much for the interesting meeting. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm the director of newly founded company in Armenia, the mass media company website called New Armenia.am, which was founded after the Velvet Revolution in Armenia to change the situation, the monopoly in mass media that we have right now. So my question is that the stereotyping mindset is still a big problem in Armenia, and how to show that even though that you are a young lady, less experienced, that your voice has to be listened, and maybe you read more or your mindset is very different from that, but maybe you can be right.
Do you face this problem now?
Yes, sometimes I do, because even in my company there are lots of much more experienced people that think that they know better than I can.
Understood. Yeah, thanks a lot, Tatevik. Thank you. Let's start from Marketa again. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Hi to Armenia. Thank you for coming and listening to us. Well, as I already said, yes, it helps to be the most informed person in the room, but of course that can be really demanding. So it's not just that you don't have to read the most or know the most. That would be even too much and impossible to fulfill, every time. So it's really hard to give advice when I don't know in what environment you are. But for me, it helps to find the reasonable, experienced people among those who I'm working with, and to connect with them, so that when there is a problem, I know that I have someone older or more experienced that I can discuss the problem with, and then they can help me push the solution or push for whatever we want to push. It sometimes seems like, oh, but I came up with the solution, not the older or experienced or more respected person. But if we want to achieve something, then as a pirate, I always say sharing is caring. You know, it's not about egos or who came up with the solution. It's about changing something. So it's good to have on your side some people like that, and I hope that there are some people like that. But even in the parliament, it's not like, you know, I'm the young MEP and I hate on all the older MEPs. It's not like that. I cooperate with those that are on the same line, or just listen to what I have to say, and I listen to what they have to say, because then we can have the balance, and then they can help me to push it in case there is some kind of, you know, blockade from some more narrow-minded people. So that would be partially my advice. And if there are none people like that that you can really trust that they will help you, then you have to become that person in one person. It will be really difficult, but if the organization is worth it, and you think that it's doing great job in whatever really, you know, whatever helps you, then I guess you will find the energy and motivation.
Thanks a lot. Natalia, any suggestions to Armenia?
Yes, great suggestions by Marketa. Just again, leadership is not about giving up. It's like you are very motivated, you are consistent, persistent. You have some idea, you do that at first. Of course, it's very difficult, and don't give up despite any criticism or despite skepticism. Just continue, and the more you do that, the more success stories you have, the more you are again consistent and keep performing, keep delivering. The more reputation, the better reputation you'll have, the more support you'll have, and just this is how you start doing that. It's not easy, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe I would just add that I would, of course, agree with Marketa of what she said, but if you're not even interested, maybe it happens with those people who do not consider you as a leader. You must listen to them, you must show them your respect, and in this way they will feel that you're close to them and you need them, and they will feel more confident. And it's important. Maybe it's some kind of manipulations, but it's also very important, because you have to build a team of like-minded people, bring them together, and that's why it's very important sometimes to maybe use some psychological tools to unite everyone in your team. And secondly, Marketa said about being the most informed person in the room. Maybe it is also very important to be the coolest person in the room. What I mean is when they see that you are proactive and you are meeting hundreds of people daily and you are very busy and you are doing hard work and etc., they will feel it. They will feel that you became already more experienced, and they will understand that you reached some higher level and they have to deal with it somehow. So this is it, and I would like to say thanks a lot to our distinguished speakers, Ms. Marketa Gregorova from European Parliament, Ms. Natalia Arno, the president of the Russia Foundation, and I wish you all to have a safe quarantine time. And thanks again to all our participants and for their questions as well. Best wishes to all of you in this very difficult period. Thanks a lot.